All right, oil plumes. This is one of the things that we talked about in those, 3 months. It seemed endless. All that time that we were talking about that oil in the Gulf of Mexico. There was oil on the surface. There was oil washing ashore. It was affecting animals. And then there were these oil plumes, oil under the surface of the ocean. Well, there were a group that were studying these oil plumes, and they've just come out with a report about an oil plume. First of all, I want to show you the quantity of oil in general that was lost into the Gulf of Mexico. See those circles on the left? There's a blue one within which there's a gray one, and then there's a little gray spot at the bottom. The gray spot at the bottom is all the oil that leaked out of the Exxon Valdez. All right. Now, the bigger circle into which that falls is all of the oil that came out of the Macondo well. This is the BP well. This oil disaster, 4.9 million barrels is the estimate. Could go up. And right around there, the blue circle is actually the biggest. It was a 1991 Persian Gulf oil spill, 5.7 million. So you can see we're almost at the biggest oil spill there ever was. Where has all this oil gone? As you know, some of it washed up on shore, some of it dispersed, some of it is still in the ocean as plumes, some of it was burned, some of it was flared, but there's still some oil in the Gulf of Mexico, possibly a lot of it. And according to a report released by the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, there was a plume, at least in June, that was 22 miles long, 1.2 miles wide, 650 feet high, and it was half a mile down into the Gulf. I want to talk to the scientists who made this determination. Rich Camelli is the chief scientist and environmental engineer at Woods Hole. Chris Reddy is a co-principal investigator, marine chemist, and oil spill expert. They're joining me now. Gents, thanks for being with us. Is this plume still there?
It's unlikely that it's still there because the well was shut off several weeks ago, and we know from our survey back in June that this plume was flowing at a rate of about 6.5 kilometers per day. And given that the well was shut off several weeks ago, it's likely that those hydrocarbons that were there back during our survey have since moved on.
Moved on where? Meaning, do you think they're somewhere in the water still? Are they dispersing?
It's unclear exactly where they are now, but we know that the plume was moving to the southwest when we did the survey.
What's the effect of this, Chris? What should we be thinking about? There's a lot of oil that was there somewhere. It must be somewhere. How do we sort of track the effect of this oil spill on our wildlife, on our fisheries, and what do we learn from it for next time?
Well, I think the first thing that we learned from this study is that oil can be submerged below the surface of the ocean. That was our first goal. Is conventional wisdom is that oil floats. The fact that we could pinpoint and accurately survey a plume of that size with the type of technology that we could bring to bear was the most important. The next step is for us to get a really good handle as to the full inventory of the compounds that are in the plume. We are still working very hard in collaboration with NOAA as to how much oil is in the plume. And once you know how much oil is in there, then you can start to discuss damages. But again, the most important aspect of this was to identify that a plume could exist and that it was of this scale.
You were tracking this, you were on top of it, and then all of a sudden you couldn't because of the weather. You lost track of it, but the weather you guys in your report say doesn't affect the plume, it just affects your ability to track it.
Well, we had to break off tracking because of Hurricane Alex. It was approaching, and the Coast Guard required that all non-essential ships evacuate. So at that point, we had to break off tracking, and unfortunately, we couldn't track it any further.
What's the sense of what you know to be under the water, or what your report was able to track, versus what NOAA was saying in terms of the amount of oil that's spilled? Do you think that they're underestimating the amount of oil that was actually in the Gulf of Mexico?
I think at this point, what we have to keep in mind is that these estimates that are being produced are the first round of a long list of estimates that are going to come out. Science moves incrementally, and what we hope is that the information that we gave out yesterday, or presented yesterday, will be used in future studies. But science moves slowly, patiently, and this story is not going to go away. So we just have to hang in there at this point, and we'll be able to answer a lot more questions. And many people will answer more questions with time.
Well, we've stuck around this long, we might as well stick around. Chad Myers at our Severe Weather Center has been tracking this since the first day that this all developed. Chad, this is the third report we've seen this week that indicates that something's not copacetic with NOAA and the estimates of how much oil actually flowed into the Gulf.
Well, and I hope those men can stay with us for a little bit, because I do want to ask them some questions, or you can if they can't hear me. I've made a map here. This is the Gulf of Mexico, and I made a map of a plume that would be 22 miles long and 1 mile wide. You can see it. It's like the size of a pin. It literally is very small compared to the size of the Gulf of Mexico. 22 miles seems very large. My issue is that they found one. There may be how many others out there that they didn't find because their boat, their ship, their equipment just was not in the right place. I think that a lot of this happens because of how this water and how this oil was aerosolized due to the high pressure down below and how it came out with other hydrocarbons and other gases as well. But men, if you can hear me, this isn't the only one that you think is out there or was out there at the time. Is that right?
I should start by saying our goals for this survey was to, first of all, establish if there were plumes in the water column. Based on the initial evidence that we had, we decided to track the plume that we found.
Okay.
We weren't trying to establish how many plumes there were, just whether they did exist or not, and then characterize this one that we found.
Did you take a sample?
Oh, yes, we took many samples, and if you can imagine this in terms of what we describe as a hunter-gatherer type technique. We used some experimental systems, some robotic systems, autonomous underwater vehicle to basically act as a forward reconnaissance tool that allowed us to vector the ship in so that we could then take those samples. And my colleague, Dr. Reddy, can describe how those samples were taken.
Yeah, I mean, let me first respond that you're absolutely right that this plume is certainly small in the Gulf of Mexico, and it underscores a rather important point that the generalities about any aspect of the Gulf have to be kept in mind. It is a very large area. So that's the first thing. Yes, we collected hundreds of samples. They are being analyzed in collaboration with NOAA. We did that as an effort with both NOAA and British Petroleum and the EPA all had advisors on the boat watching us collect these samples. And the analysis of water samples is not like it is on TV shows where you get data in 8 seconds. It takes a very long time for it to go through a variety of quality control and validation processes until it's pretty tight, per se. We certainly had enough data to essentially tie in this whole story, but certainly much more data is in the pipeline. And when we have that pipeline, not only will we be able to identify and maybe get a gauge on toxicity of this plume, but also perhaps even more importantly, try to figure out what chemicals that were spewing out of this at 5,000 feet decided to take a right-hand turn and go into this plume versus going up to the surface. And that's where, some just solid, good environmental chemistry probably will give us a good insight into how oil behaves in an opportunity that's never happened before. I mean, this is a natural experiment. We have dealt nature a very large...
Dr. Reddy, I got to stop you because I'm about to get my PhD in oil plumes, so I appreciate it.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No, that's clearly there isn't. In fact, if there had been, it's all of a sudden become very valuable. So I do appreciate that you guys have it and the work that you guys done. And as you said, Chris, we will be patient about sticking with this because we do want to know what the long-term effects of this are. But unfortunately, I have to actually get paid here, and that means going to commercial break. Rich Kamel.
Tens of thousands of dead fish wash ashore along the Delaware Bay in South Jersey. This is a mess that you have to see to believe, and it has beachgoers worried. Many of the dead fish have washed up on Hy's Beach in Middle Township, New Jersey. Environmental officials don't know how or why the fish died. NBC 10's Doug Schimel is there live tonight. So, Doug, what do they know at this hour tonight?
Well, you know what? Not a whole heck of a lot, and this is a massive fish kill and affects anybody who lives or vacations along this stretch of the bay. It can be more than 10 feet wide as you go south toward Cape May. If you're upwind as we are, it's tolerable, but when the wind changes, it creates a huge, unmistakable concern for anyone around here. Once you figured out what it was, the smell hit you.
Garbage. It's fish, so it's going to smell really bad.
All of this greeted Christine Cummings on her Wednesday morning beach walk.
It looked like a foam, actually. It was out there. And a little further down, we saw a couple of fish. Like, oh, that's a shame. It's a couple of... Then we realized, no, it's all fish.
All along Hy's Beach on the bay side of Middle Township, Cape May County, New Jersey, tens of thousands of what residents say are small bunker, a bait-type fish, all dead.
It's scary because we were swimming in this all... So far, we've been here since last Friday, and it's been wonderful, nice and clear. As
you head south toward Villas, New Jersey, the massive fish kill drops down to 3 to 4 feet wide. And what should have been a feeding frenzy for seagulls, they won't touch.
I haven't seen anything like this. I'm concerned about what's killing the fish. I'm worried about what caused this.
New Jersey environmental officials are analyzing oxygen levels in the water, but they say samples so far do not show the typical causes of fish kills like red tide. So until there's some resolution, the residents and the renters are staying out of the bay and away from Dino Castellani's favorite pastime.
Cape May Diamonds.
Can you do that today? Why?
Fish.
And there are lots and lots of fish out here, and whether the cause is natural or man-made, these fish will likely be here until the next few tides take them and that distinctive odor away. Live in Middle Township, New Jersey, I'm Doug.